My mic.
Mine or Ivanka? I'll just talk really loud because I don't know how to control it.
Okay, here we go. All right. This better? All right. So the first question is very simple because everybody really admires how you've been able to balance this really successful enterprise that you have with being a mom. And it's very clear to everybody that being a mom is something you really love to do. How do you do it, and what is it possible to be successful in the workforce and also be a great mom if you're not Ivanka Trump?
Well, I think so many women in this room and men in this room are doing just that. So, I think being a working parent is enormously challenging, but it's amazingly fulfilling as well. So I feel very blessed that I'm able to go into the office every day and do something professionally that is deeply fulfilling to me. I wouldn't be able to do that without a support system and without an infrastructure, and I'm the first to recognize and be enormously grateful for the people in my life who enable that to be true, for me to be able to have that multifaceted component to my life and to be able to work outside of the home as well as inside the home. And that includes my mother-in-law, so a special call out for Cyril, but also my nanny. And so I recognize the importance of childcare, especially in those early years prior to your child being on a more predictable school schedule. And it's one of the reasons that I'm so excited about the child care plan my father put forth to help all American parents cover the cost of childcare, recognize it for what it is, a business-related expense, and make it deductible from one's income tax. And if they don't pay income tax, expanding the earned income tax credit to enable them to cover the cost of childcare, but also allowing the parent to decide what that looks like. Is it childcare within their home, offsetting some of the cost of the nanny, for example? Is it after-school enrichment activities? Is it how a parent chooses to care for their child? Traditional daycare should be the choice of the parent. I also think one of the things that that is something that it's long overdue that we recognize and honor is the important role of stay-at-home parents and the incredible hard work that they're doing. And my father's plan calls for those parents to receive the same benefit in the form of a deduction from their family's income tax for the care that they're providing to their families. Which, thank you. Being a stay-at-home parent is hard work. And I know because there are Monday mornings where I'm leaving my house really excited to get out of there. And I definitely am more tired on a Monday morning than I am on a Friday, and on a Friday evening when I come home, and I work very hard in the office. So, bringing up children is very hard work, and the tax code should be neutral as to somebody's decision, whether they're working inside or outside of the home, and either way acknowledge their tremendous contribution. But, the question had initially started with balance, and what I say to people, and it's probably the most commonly asked question I get, it's more often a question asked of women, but increasingly men are taking a much, much more active role than in previous generations in the lives of their families. So it's an increasingly relevant question, of course, for them as well. But I really try to avoid talking about balance too rigidly, because I think that it's largely impossible to achieve. You can plan for certain things. So structurally, I'll look at my calendar, and I know because I'm with you all today, I'm not going to plan to be somewhere tomorrow morning and miss drop-off since I'm going to miss bedtime. So I will set limits on my schedule to ensure that I'm with my children as often as I can be at the anchors of their day in the morning and in the evenings. But everyone knows that you're one child's flu away from all balance going out the window. So it's very self-defeating to be too rigid in your approach. And it's amazing the people who are, the most busy people, how they're living in fear. And we've all had these weeks and days and months where you're living in fear that if one thing goes wrong, your whole schedule is going to descend into utter chaos. So, I think rather than think about having to achieve balance, I always tell people that it's probably healthier to just try to be reflective periodically about architecting a life that's in accordance with your priorities. And I spend the time every week to really think about the week that just passed and ask myself, was I where I needed to be? Was I with my children when I needed to be with them and when they needed me there? Was I focused on work when an important project came up? Was I focused on the right things at work? Was I spending my time wisely and efficiently? And just checking in with myself to make sure that I'm setting up my life in a way that's optimized in accordance with my top priorities. And, if repeatedly I look and I say that's not happening, then I try to make a change. And I think about what I can do to realign things. So that's the advice I give to people. It's a little easier because at the end of the day, look, life's a marathon, not a sprint. So you just want to set, I think it's most useful to set up your time sort of thinking about how to architect a life that ultimately you want to live, whatever that looks like to you.
Well, I just want to say that as a Republican woman, I was really proud when this plan came out, the child care plan. I work right now, but for 14 years, I was an at-home mom. And I felt like one of the most difficult things was that in the feminist world, I felt invisible. And that's why I actually wrote a book about being an at-home parent because of that. And I felt like the tax break, that it was not exclusively for working parents, that tax break was about making choices. And I thought ultimately that was what feminism was about. It's about us being able to make the right choice for our family and our circumstance. So I'm really proud of it. I think you guys did a great job with it. And I've heard really great things on both sides of the aisle about it.
It's amazing. The support has been incredible, and I'm very excited. I went down to D.C. and met with some of the top Republican lawmakers and talked through the plan, and their level of excitement was tremendous. So I feel that we're really moving the needle in a very, very positive direction on a topic that is so critical and so important. And I agree with you. I think there does happen to be, sadly, there is a tendency to want to compartmentalize people and to say, well, you're a stay-at-home mother or you're a working mother. Look, we're all working women. We're all working to create lives we want to live. Work looks different to each and every one of us. And, we have to honor and celebrate the individual choices made by each of us because work is not one thing. And certainly stay-at-home parents are working very, very hard and making great contributions as well.
That's right. So the next question I have for you is about school choice. As you know, Milwaukee, Wisconsin has always been on the forefront, the leaders in the school choice movement in America. Your father has taken a really strong position on this. It's a very distinct position from Hillary Clinton. And I frankly think it's an issue that wins over minorities. As a Hispanic woman, I know that opportunity comes from education, that is the way to upward mobility, and giving parents that choice is so important. Tell us about your thoughts about your dad's plan for school choice, and what is he doing to get that message out, especially into communities that are poor or minority?
No, I think it's so important. And if you check out his website, if you go onto his Facebook page, he's recently given an incredible speech on exactly this topic because the level of incredible innovation we are seeing in education on a state level is remarkable. And oftentimes that's overlooked or ignored because, sadly, a lot of policies are coming from the top down and being created in D.C. and are sorely inadequate and don't allow for things to be customized and enhanced within the communities for the benefit of the children within those communities. So there is so much more that needs to be done, but there are great, great, great examples all across this country of that happening. And my father's plan is to dramatically encourage that, to create massive block grants, $20 billion of block grants that will go directly to the states to repeal Common Core, which he is not a fan of, and I think most everyone in this room agrees with, and to generally reject this notion that there's a one-size-fits-all solution. Look, education is the most important thing for the future of this country. We need to be preparing the next generation to be able to take on the challenges and to create opportunities for themselves. And the poorest communities are the ones that are hurt the most by this. So encouraging school choice, creation of block grants, empowering the states, creating a merit-based pay program that rewards great teachers, because there are so many unbelievable teachers who are doing such tremendous work across the country, and eliminating the idea of tenure in favor of merit-based pay. Also, as students start to get older, also encouraging, once again, vocational education, because that used to be a big focus in this country, and now it is second tier at best in terms of priorities. So rethinking through those programs and really encouraging them, because look, college is not right for everyone, and it should not be the only option for people once they graduate from high school. So thinking through vocational education opportunities as well. I think everyone knows that we have an enormous problem in our colleges with student debt. Kids are coming out, they're unable to find jobs, and they have massive debt burdens just as they're starting out their life at a moment of already tremendous financial insecurity, given that jobs are so hard to come by, great high-paying jobs are so hard to come by. So rethinking how colleges gain access to the loans that they're provided, and the loans are coming from the government. The money is coming from the government, so there has to be a correlation between graduation rate and the money a university is receiving. If their students are dropping out at enormous rates in their freshman and sophomore year, still leaving those students with enormous debt tabs. So creating a correlation and holding the colleges accountable, creating transparency around pricing, and relevant metrics for students that are looking at their opportunities and analyzing the different universities. And then, of course, dealing with the existing debt load that so many millions of Americans are really suffering under. So my father's rolled out a very comprehensive plan on all of these fronts. It's available on the site, and like I mentioned, it's worth listening to his speech on this topic, because he's put forth some incredible ideas, and I think it's very important. Education is a top priority for him, and should be for every American.
Absolutely. Okay, we have a few people that have some questions in the audience, so we're going to start with our Wisconsin State Senator, Mary Lazick. Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for visiting us and your comments. Is this on?
Thank you, Mary.
Due to the recent terrorist attacks on U.S. soil, there's many parents and grandparents here in Wisconsin and across the country that are very concerned about the safety of the children and grandchildren. How is your dad the best person to keep America safe?
Well, I think if you've been listening to him for the past year and a half, you know his passion and his the importance of this particular topic for him. I mean, national security is everything. We need to feel comfortable within our communities, within our cities, taking our children to school. Domestic security, incredibly important, national security as well. So without any ambiguity, ISIS is a top priority. And I believe, and I'm very confident in his ability to be very effective. Look, a lot of decision-making at this level comes down to judgment and to instinct. And my whole life, I can only talk from my own experience and my personal experience. Certainly, he's laid out his foreign policies and his ideas on what's been done poorly and what he would do differently numerous times. And I'll allow him to speak for himself on that front. But my father has tremendous judgment, a great instinct for distilling incredibly complicated problems. And there's no ambiguity around this fact. I mean, dealing with ISIS and dealing with the foreign threats that this country is facing is enormously complicated and incredibly challenging. But my whole life, I've seen him look at incredibly complex situations and distill them down into something that's actionable, something that's pragmatic, and ultimately being able to execute. So I've seen this time and time again in a very different capacity in his role as a businessman. But I've also heard him opine over the years on what he's seeing that's going wrong with the decisions coming out of Washington as it pertains to our national security. And I've heard his viewpoints, and it's been remarkable to see over the course of the last 2 decades just how right he's been every time. And, you know, this was just a daughter sitting at a dinner table listening to her father talk, not so different than many of the conversations I'm sure you have around yours. But I have the benefit of having been there and having heard how consistent he's been over the years and how right he's been, especially in retrospect. So I know that he will be incredibly solid on this front, and it's certainly his top priority.
It seems to me on this particular subject that what people like about your dad is he sort of removes the political correctness around the issue and really wants to deal with it.
He is not politically correct. And I think we love that about him, right? 97% of the time. But look, politically correct. The word political's in there, right? He's not a politician. People have learned to navigate and, say one thing and do another. With what my father, what you see is what you get. What you hear is what you get. He's incredibly candid. He will never lie to the American people. He will always be forthright with his opinions and his perspectives, even if that's not what somebody wants to hear. It's who he is. He doesn't know how to be another way.
Our next question comes to us from Kathy Kiernan.
So why are you confident that your father will make a great president?
Hi, Kathy. How are you? Thank you. I love this. This is amazing. Thank you. So I'm confident on numerous levels. I have the good fortune of knowing him both from the perspective of his child. I've also worked with him for over a decade at the Trump Organization, and I've seen him inspire tens of thousands of people every single day. And I talk a lot about this idea of leadership and what does it mean to be a great leader. And I've learned so much from him in this capacity as this next generation coming into the company and having built my own business as well. There are a lot of people who are good managers of people, and then there are leaders who set big, bold visions, who aren't afraid, who encourage people to be the best versions of themselves and give them the tools to do so. My father couldn't have built the businesses he's built on his own. It required him to find the best talent, to give people the opportunity to succeed, to set the vision for them and help them reach the right conclusion. And he's done that. Over the years, I've seen him appoint unbelievable people to top leadership positions, and not always the obvious ones. You know, one of the amazing things about my father is that he doesn't always follow pedigree. It's not, this is the person who has the right training, it's the person he knows has the ability to get the job done. And we have countless examples of being people within our company who have risen to the occasion. He's always been there along the way to help them get there. So he is a tremendous leader, a great source of inspiration to everyone who works for him at our business. But, you know, when I think about sort of where he started, and he's built so many different businesses, and he's succeeded across so many different industries at really that highest level. But, you know, when I think about where he started construction, to be able to build something, and to be able to build something the magnitude of what he does, these 92-story towers, you have to have vision, but you have to be able to execute. Construction is a very complicated game where you have hundreds of people, all with different ideas and oftentimes different motivations or different incentives that you have to align behind a common goal. And he's done that time and time again. So he's great at team building. He's great from a leadership perspective. I mentioned before his instincts are tremendous. And I think you also have somebody, and this is, I don't say this lightly because I can't think of another time that this could happen, where you have someone who is not beholden to anyone other than the American people. He's done this. I don't want to say he's done it himself, because he's done it, there have been so many great people who have helped along the way, but he's done it for the people in this room. And he's not afraid to take on the hard fights. He's not afraid to solve the complicated problems and start with addressing them. And that is so rare. That is so rare. And you know, this has been a wild process. You know, we're not a family of politicians, so I don't think any one of us could have expected what this journey would be. But every day he's motivated by the enormous crowds he meets with, the people he meets with all over this country who have such conviction and such belief in his message and his ability to create a better lives for them and their families, and to fix what 70% of this country feels is broken. And he will do just that.
We have a question from Lori Bujak.
Ivanka, it's an honor to have you here. So my question is, Milwaukee has been devastated with crime and is listed as the 5th most dangerous city in our country. How would your father help the residents of communities that live under the threat of violence every day?
Thank you. It's a great question and a very important question. You know, I think my father has described himself as a law and order candidate. He has tremendous endorsements from law enforcement personnel across this country, and there's tremendous love for him within that community because he supports them and recognizes the hard work they're doing and the tremendous sacrifice they make each and every day when they leave their house and show up for work, and believes deeply in supporting them. He also believes that it's incredibly important for the communities to get involved and for law enforcement to work hand in hand with communities. So, you know, the work that the police officers, men and women around this country are doing is tremendous, but they can't be effective without the community support and encouragement and embrace. So creating and cultivating more harmonious relationships where they're fraught is incredibly important and needs to be a priority. So supporting states in facilitating and doing just that. I think when you look at crime, particularly when you look at it in inner cities, and you think about the root causes, I mean, education is so important. People have to come up through the educational system with a belief that there are going to be opportunities for them on the other side of it. And there has to be a culture of hope and of optimism and excitement about the future, and there have to be jobs. So important. You know, my father has employed so many people. He understands the concerns of employers. He understands the burden and the disincentives of even well-meaning, but oftentimes, you know, regulations with unintended consequences. So lifting regulatory hurdles that stifle entrepreneurship and hurt small business owners, thus disincentivizing them from creating additional jobs. But, you know, I think jobs are so critical, especially within our cities, and obviously joblessness is directly correlated in many cases with lawlessness. So, you know, a real focus on getting everyone in this country back to work across the nation, and with a real focus on some of the cities that have been hit most hard, a focus on education, giving that next generation hope for a better tomorrow. Look, I'm a mother of 3 children, and all you want is your children, or at least from my perspective, I obviously can't speak for anyone other than me, but I think most parents would say that they want their children to be afforded greater opportunities than they had, and are willing to make a lot of sacrifices to ensure that's true, and that's something that their kids can realize. So I think giving parents also that hope, that there'll be a brighter future for them, but also for the generation that comes behind. So I think these are all, enormously complex but critical issues that would be tackled immediately should my father be elected president.
Great. We're coming to the end. We're coming to the end of our event. We have one more question. Can we get one from the audience? Just one more. Yes.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to... Is this on? First of all, I would like to say that I really appreciate what your dad said last night about voting for Supreme Court justices that will support pro-life issues. I was disturbed last night when I heard the response from Hillary Clinton when your dad mentioned partial birth abortion, which I also appreciate that he mentioned. And I would just ask if you could please mention to your dad that if he could somehow get ads out about what exactly partial birth abortion is, that the baby's head is cut off, because he mentioned that the baby would be pulled. I don't remember the exact words, but I don't think he mentioned that the baby's head would be cut off. And I think if there's people out there that don't realize what that is, it's important for them to know. The other thing is that I'm concerned about the potential for voter fraud. And I'm really concerned about what I've heard in the tapes, and that there are people that are supposedly going to be bringing in people in rental cars. And I just implore you to get more ads out and to get more things out, because we really need someone who's going to be pro-life and bringing in the right Supreme Court justices.
Thank you for your comment, and I'll relay that to him. Absolutely.
All right, I think we're gonna end it. And just one last question for you, Ivanka. What is the best advice your dad has ever given you?
Ooh. The best advice he's ever given me is to love what you do. And it's so simple. But he said, from when I was a little girl, he's like, look, it's a competitive world out there. And if you don't love what it is that you're doing, you'll just never be as good as someone else who does. Doesn't matter.
Great
Doesn't
advice.
matter your education. You have to love it. So
thank you so much.